Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you are studying English, and especially if you're an A2 level learner tuning in from Brazil, you are absolutely going to love what we have on the agenda today. We're tackling a massive milestone in your language journey. We're going to talk about imaginary, impossible, and just highly unlikely situations. We're talking dreams, we're talking dilemmas, and those famous what-ifs. That's right, today we are mastering the second conditional. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap so this doesn't feel overwhelming. First, we'll hit the $750,000 question. Then we'll look at the conditional formula. After that, we'll compare the first and second conditional. Then we'll figure out when to use would, could, or might. And finally, we'll wrap up with the to be exception. Section 1, the $750,000 question, imagining the impossible. To really wrap our heads around this grammar, we need to anchor it in a high-stakes scenario straight from our source material. And I want you to be the protagonist here. Ask yourself, what would you do if you found $750,000 in cold, hard cash? Our source actually shares a wild, real-life news story about a businessman who found exactly this amount. He returned it to the owner, and guess what he got as a reward? Literally just a quick phone call saying, "Thanks." In a conversation from our material, a guy named Phil hears this story and says, "You're kidding. If I found $750,000, I wouldn't return it so fast. I'd go out and start spending it on clothes and jewelry." But why is Phil using these specific words? Well, this brilliantly illustrates our current reality. Take a look at our pockets. They're completely empty, right? We don't actually have that money. Because the situation of finding a literal fortune is entirely hypothetical and just not real for us right now, we can't use normal present or future tenses. We have to use the second conditional to express this imaginary state. Section 2, the conditional formula, building the sentence. Now that we know the why behind it, let's look at the actual mathematical structure of how we build these sentences in English. It all boils down to two parts, the condition and the result. First up is the condition. If plus the past simple tense. For example, if he knew her number. Then comes the result, would plus the base verb. He would call her. There's also a super important punctuation rule to remember here. When the if condition comes first, you always put a comma before the result. But if you swap them around and say, he would call her if he knew her number, boom, the comma disappears. It really is that simple. But hold up, because this is exactly where a lot of learners get a bit tripped up. We use the past simple tense in the if clause, like if I found or if he knew, but we are not actually talking about the past. In the second conditional, the past simple indicates a distance from reality. It just shows we are super far away from what is actually real, even though we are talking about the present or the immediate future. Section 3, first versus second conditional, real versus unreal. So the crucial point here is knowing when to use the first conditional and when to jump to the second. Let's look at this comparison objectively, just like it's presented in our source. Imagine a real political candidate, like Hillary Clinton, speaking before an election. She's a realistic possibility of winning, right? So she makes a real promise using the first conditional. If I become president, I will reduce taxes. Notice the present simple and the future simple there. Now, contrast that with a young, dreaming student. For them, becoming president right now is a purely imaginary, hypothetical scenario. So they use the second conditional. If I became president, I would reduce taxes. The meaning changes completely based on how real the possibility is. Section 4, would, could, or might, changing the result. Now, we've used would a whole lot so far, but you actually have other tools in your grammatical toolbox to change the exact level of certainty in your hypothetical results. Let's say you're talking about a friend playing a tennis match in an imaginary scenario. If you played tennis together, if you want to express absolute certainty about the result, you say, he would win. But what if you aren't so sure? You just swap that out and say, he might win. That shows it's a possibility, but definitely not guaranteed. And if you want to express that he simply has the raw ability to win, you say he could win. See that? Just by changing a single word, you can express exactly what you mean in these unreal situations. Section 5, the to be exception, a common subjunctive trap. Now pay close attention to this next part, because this is where a ton of language learners, especially our friends studying in Brazil, run into a really common grammatical trap. When we use the verb to be as the main verb in our condition, things get a little bit weird. Because of direct translation habits from Portuguese, a lot of Brazilian students accidentally use the normal past tense indicative mood. But saying if I was you is actually grammatically wrong in this context. The right way to say it is if I were you. In the second conditional, we enter what's called the subjunctive mood, which basically means we use were for all subjects across the board. So it's if I were, if he were rich, if she were here. And honestly, this specific phrase, if I were you, is incredibly powerful. It is a universally helpful expression that you should just memorize right now for giving advice. If your friend is in trouble, you can simply say, if I were you, I would say sorry to your parents. Or, if I were you, I'd go to the doctor. It softens your advice by putting you right in their imaginary shoes. All right, now what's really interesting is how this brings our entire lesson full circle. We've learned the structure, the rules, and the exceptions. Now, it is time to apply it to a real-world predicament from our source material. Imagine a mechanic standing by a broken-down car on the side of a busy road. So here is your final test for this explainer. I want you to use the second conditional right now to answer this moral dilemma. If you saw someone standing on a highway next to a car with smoke pouring from the engine, what would you do? Would you just continue driving? Would you pull over and stop to help? Or would you maybe use your cell phone to call the police? Formulate your answer in your head using I would and see how perfectly you can navigate the imaginary. Keep practicing those what-ifs, and I'll see you in the next one.